Okay, Sarah, so great to be with you. Thank you for connecting.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
How are you and where are you? What's happening?
I am currently stuck in the UK, and we are still in some form of lockdown, but not really. Things are reopening now, but not the yoga studios. So yeah, we're in the process of things reopening, but there's still a lot of fear around.
Right.
You know, yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're at the beginning of the process of everything going back to normal here.
Mm.
So yeah, everyone's opening up a bit, and everything is opening up a little bit.
But you're
But it's been
still feeling the
yeah.
fear, huh?
Me personally, not. However, I have to be very sensitive to the fact that other people are, and the media here is out of control. I mean, I've been based in Bali before. I consider that to be, more of my home. So I came back from Bali into this situation, having no TV, no influence from the media, and all of a sudden, you've got a house with TVs in every room, and they're reporting on the same thing, but they're talking about completely different statistics. So I can completely understand why people are fearful. But my headspace is a little bit different. But I think we're coming out of things now. So I feel hopeful and positive. And I think this time, for the people, I think this time has been a time for reflection and planting seeds, but also a lot of trauma for some people. So hopefully
that feels like it's been one of the major toxic aspects of this whole pandemic thing is the fear and the paranoia and the more negative aspects of isolation. I've also seen that a lot here in Western Australia. Things have opened up beautifully. It kind of does feel like a little bit of a hidden, isolated paradise, even in the peak of winter right now. But in the early days of it, the fear, the panic was really hectic. We were in Hawaii at the time that just seemed really peaceful, and everyone was very level-headed, and it was kind of that predicament. Do we stay there and potentially be trapped on an island, or do we get back home? And it seems like you had a similar journey to get back home during all this, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I was due to go back to Bali in April, so I kind of just missed my opportunity to go back. But I don't regret being back here. It's been a really very interesting experience, and a good opportunity for growth. And I think I'm one of I'm one of the lucky people who, just by chance, I ended up being at my parents' house, which is a bit strange for a woman who's 32 years old, I'll admit it. But but yeah, I know that I lucked out. But it's definitely made me realize where my heart is.
Beautiful. Well, Sarah, one thing I really love about this podcast platform is it's kind of an excuse for me to get to know people I find really interesting in ways that we might not choose to connect, and I really deeply appreciate that. And I've been watching what you've been offering and what you're all about. What I noticed when I first jumped on your website was, I'll quote you wrote, "Are you doing yoga to get good at yoga or to get good at life?" And I really vibed off that. I really love that you it seems almost like a tagline where my eyes went straight to it. And I'd love to hear your journey into uncovering that, what your observations have maybe been in the yoga scene, maybe in your own journey of yoga. Have you fallen into that trap of doing yoga to get good at yoga or to get good at life? Just please speak to that.
that is a very good and very juicy question. And where I'm at now is obviously completely different to where I began. And where I began is where most people begin. We're in our bodies. We're at the gates and not really in we're worshipping the gates and not the temple, right? So when I teach now, it's a very different style. But when I began, it was about the body and, you know, a lot of like push and pump yoga, you know, just wanting to get out of my head. And I think for a lot of people, that is the best way to get out of their head, especially in the West. You know, it's, you know, that's where we're at. So to get into the body is the first step. So that's kind of where I began with that. But I mean, if I jump a little bit further into the past, my background, you know, I was based in fashion advertising and I was big on partying, and I just didn't have the understanding or the grounding or the appreciation of ethics and values, really. And I'd gone into the big wide world and I was trying to make sense of it all in a job where everything is just about the visual. It's just the surface. It is about the gates. It's only about the gates, really. And I was confused and numbing. And I think in my experience, that's what the majority of people, that's the reason the majority of people first start coming to yoga. They're dissatisfied with something in their life. They're hurt in some way. They're trying to repair. They're trying to figure out, you know, how to move forward. And they come to yoga because they want to get out of their heads. They want to understand their bodies, and they just want to pause. They just want space from life. And then all the other stuff comes, of course, and you know about that. So, but yeah, so that's how I got into it. And then you know, yoga, it's got 5,000 years of history. And so for someone who is obsessed with learning, I was hooked because I thought, I'm never going to know anything. This is great. So yeah, I would do yoga on and off, you know, like the same way I would party, in the same way that I would do everything, and then the same way I would diet, the same way that I was as a white middle-class woman. I would kind of binge on this for a few months and then go back to this, and I would try this and that, but I never really stuck with it. And then it just started sticking, and I got into the philosophy of it. And there are some things that you can't unlearn. And I started having aha moments every day. And I did Transcendental Meditation, and it didn't work for me at all. It just didn't work. I completely didn't stick with me. I thought it would, because I thought, oh, you know, I love science. This is really, but it didn't stick. And but then I found my own way. When you're in Bali, I mean, you've been, right? You've had the experience.
Spent a lot of time there. It was one of my first real awakening to being in Bali. I'll speak a little bit about it, then I'll hand the mic back to you, because it was just so profound. I was 19. It was my first overseas trip, and went with about 25 Aussie mates for a party trip. And, you know, just into Kuta for a party trip. Yet after about a couple of days of partying, I was observing the Balinese people in their daily modes of prayer, even in Kuta, which, for listeners that haven't been there, I mean, what's the equivalent? I mean, so many different countries have the equivalent of Kuta, that kind of touristy party epicenter. And I just wasn't interested in partying, and I was just magnetized to these modes of prayer. I could just feel the beauty coming from the Balinese people. And it was my first real, actually not my first, but one of the first real palpable integrative experiences of like, okay, this is not for me anymore, the partying thing. And this is it. And I didn't know what it was yet, because I had termed myself as not a religious person, and yoga hadn't come into my life quite yet. Yet I was feeling something very just intangible, yet undeniable. That was a spiritual experience, even though I didn't have the languaging to contextualize it. And it changed my life forever. And I tried to get back to Bali whenever I could. And then eventually yoga did come into my life after other modes of meditation and life coaching and just finding my way there, or it finding me. But I've got such a deep connection to Bali, but you keep going.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I don't see Bali as a place, I see it as a person. And it's interesting what you said about getting that first taste and then the other stuff kind of not being so the others. It's like I listen to a lot of stuff by Michael Stone. I don't know if you know about him, but he, you know, in one of the talks that he gives, he talks about what happens when the fences drop. You know, what happens when you get that taste of things being a little bit deeper, and you find new depths to yourself and new depths to consciousness that you never saw existed before. And to some extent, well, actually to all extents, it's all positive. Meditation is all positive, but the path is tricky because you feel, and I talk about this a lot actually, this, as you get deeper into meditation and you spend more time in the boundless world, you feel a bit less connected to life as it was. So coming back to a place like the UK, where everything is very media based, and you know, I'm the first person to call myself out at spiritual bypassing because I've done it before, so I know what it looks like. It's not nice, but you know, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you feel something, and you know, it depends on how you practice. For me, when I practice, I like there to be some mantra. I like to feel an emotional connection in my practice. That's what takes me deep. And you know, it used to be more the physical, but now it's the emotional and being in my heart, you know, because I just thought I wanted to get out of my head, and now I realize, oh, actually, you know, being in my heart is so much more powerful. Because if I'm just in my head and I'm in a situation and, you know, something bad happens to me or to someone else, and I go, oh, you know, that's karma, or, you know, that's happened because that person's done that, or oh, that's happened because I've done that. I leave my heart. So now when I practice, I try to do things which help me sit in my heart and actually experience the situation for what it is. And when you get a taste of that, being somewhere like Bali, or being anywhere, you know, being in another place, like say, for example, London, and I don't want to diss off the space at all. You know, I came back to the UK very much thinking, I'm going to come to London, I'm going to, you know, spread, you know, what I, you know, with the Tantra and that, not neo Tantra, but, you know, old school. And, you know, that's what I'm going to do. And I came back, and to some extent, I of course believe everywhere you go, there you are. But it's undeniable that when you do become a bit more aware to energy, that when you go to a place like a city, it does give off a different energy, right? And we've seen it. A great example is of what's happened with COVID. When the city stops, the city collapses, you know, everything breaks. So when you're in a city where everything only works because people are consistently working and consistently going, to then go into that space and then tell people, no, you slow down, you know, like, it's fine to do that, and it does help people, but I can't personally get as deep and as quiet as where I am when I'm in the countryside, or when I'm in Bali, or when I'm around others who are, you know, in some way seeking, not maybe seeking is the wrong word, but I feel like, yeah, Bali really, it showed me how much deeper things can go. And it showed me so many people who were aware of things that I wasn't aware of, but I could feel to be true. So yeah, so that's that for me, and that's how I feel about yoga. The deeper I go into it, the less I know, and I love that. And I'm very interested now. You know, of course, I have appreciation for asana, and I'm, you know, there are so many voices now. I think you've had Octavio on, right? He explains this far more eloquently than I can, but you know, this obsession with asana over here it's you know, it's a great first step, but as a teacher, you're taking people on the journey with you. I'm not a master, I'm not a guru, right? So I'm just taking people along the journey with me, and now I'm in a space where it's really about meditation and emotion. And so, but in order for me to get to that place, I had to jump and pump. I had to, you know, I had to get the yoga pants. And the deeper you get into that, the more you become aware of the ethics first before everything. And I can't, you know, that's what I can't drop at the moment. So that's why I'm not just teaching asana. I want, you know, I'm interested in teaching ethics. I'm interested in unpicking fashion. I'm interested in unpicking just the things that culture has put on us, which then comes back to bite us in the ass.
Yeah.
And that's where I am personally.
That's really cool. There's a couple things I want to just pick apart there. For starters, you being back in the UK, which is a awesome challenge, but what a beautiful opportunity as well. Ramdas, and I bring it up quite a bit. Ramdas often spoke a lot about, you think you're enlightened, go back and hang out with your parents, which is what you're doing. And you're back in your hometown, and so it's deep karmic work, and it's an awesome opportunity. And
it's bhakti. This, if you want to talk about bhakti, like
bhakti and tantra right there. And he would often admit, like in his early days of being a teacher, when people would come to him with a similar predicament of like, oh, the city's getting to me, like I need to go into the mountains, or I need to go to wherever, I need to go to India, I need to go to Bali. In the early days, he would say, well, yeah, go off on pilgrimage. And then as he matured, he would say, well, if the city's pissing you off, stay fucking right in the city and do your work, you know. Which it's so challenging when we're in it. It's so seductive to keep bypassing, like you said, keep leaving those situations that deeply challenge us, such as going back to old family and hometown. And it can often bring up a lot of shit that we thought we had dealt with, and then all of a sudden here it is again. And it's deep, and it's such a precious opportunity, but boy, it's tempting to keep running from it, isn't it?
You got to do the work. Yes, yeah, but you know, in my situation, being back here for 7 months, it has been incredible, because and COVID has forced me to sit with myself and my cycles. And when you have nothing but that, you have to stare at things and learn from things. And you know, we've had some personal things going on at home, and usually I would turn away from it. But now, because I've turned into the suffering, I've actually realized how much stronger I am, and how it, you know, you have to do the work, and that's it. You have to do the work. You have to do the work. You have to work on your ethics. You have to check your values. And as yoga teachers, and as, you know, whoever you are, whatever you do, you just re-examining your values. It's been a biggie for me.
Yeah. Now, I hear it a lot from teachers of the challenge of really stepping into that next, you could say, evolution of how you teach and how you practice. So for you, did you just flow into it naturally, or was it quite challenging to kind of shift the way you teach? Because I hear it from a lot of teachers, like especially studio owners, in which they've created a kind of identity. They've created a kind of logo and image of how they teach, and students have become attached to it, familiarized with it, and but they're feeling an evolution. They're feeling a change in how they want to teach. Things are changing, things are deepening and evolving, yet feeling the predicament of like students not coming as often, students that were attached to the way you used to teach are starting to comment, not coming to class anymore. And it's very often challenging, that shift of identification. I mean, ultimately, it's a practice of letting go of that identity and really connecting with who we truly are. But it's also challenging for so many people. How was it for you when you were feeling the deepening and the changing in how you were practicing and teaching?
I just got called to step up to the plate, and that was it. And
Yeah.
and it's like what I mentioned before. When I went to some classes at the practice in Bali, and and I hadn't done tantric hatha before, and I just immediately I just knew when my students were leaving the class before, they loved it, but they were on the ceiling, they were flying around, the grounding hadn't been done, and it was pointless. It's like, well, do I want hundreds of Sarahs from 5 years ago flying around the place? No, she was like a hurricane of just mess and destruction. And no, that's not why I'm here. That's not my job. That's someone else's job if they want to do it, but I'm not going to be responsible for that. And although I have to say, I'm in a position where I don't own a studio. And I do understand, like I mentioned before, that in order to get butts in the door, sometimes you have to give them a little bit of what they want, and then a little bit of what they need, and then they get drawn in deeper. But if you have to make money, it's going to be a problem. But for me, yeah, sometimes it is a challenge, because sometimes I do think, oh, actually, it's not. The decision is, the decision for me, it just seemed quite natural. It just seemed quite easy. And like I said, once I'd felt the effect of slowing down, feeling stronger and more grounded and clearer, I just thought, well, that's how I want people to leave my class. And there are so many more incredible yoga teachers who are much better than I am at getting people to do the splits and to do all these other things. And, that's great. They're great at what they do. They can have it. That's fine. I'm going to do something else, and, just see what happens, because it doesn't feel right for me. It would be the same thing as me still working in fashion advertising, asking people to retouch the most beautiful women in the world to make them look skinnier while I'm sitting there developing an eating disorder. It doesn't make sense. You can't do it. You get to a certain point and it just doesn't feel right. And why am I alive in the world if why did I even bother coming to yoga if I'm just going to replicate the same thing in another industry? It doesn't make sense. What do you think?
Yeah. I totally agree. And I really bow to you for being courageous and accountable, and making that conscious choice, because it is very seductive to take that other route, seeing the glossy yoga journal magazines, and there is a real sexy mainstream image of yoga that's very seductive, and for a lot of people that's what people think yoga is. And then it can be quite a shock sometimes when you give them something else. So just to be empowered to be true to what you're feeling the yoga to be, rather than getting sucked into what that mainstream, more sexy appeal. It takes a lot of courage, I do think, and you got to keep doing your own inner practice and feel grounded enough in it within yourself. And I think, like you were saying, it becomes just natural for listeners that and I know it's a common predicament, that are feeling that kind of tug of war between being scared of really offering what's authentic in their experience and what's true to them, rather than just teaching what they know is safe. That's really something people need to contemplate themselves. Is it worth that, what could seem like a risk, to offer what's authentic? Or is it more worth it just to play it safe and to know that probably more people will come in the doors? But what I've seen for myself, when I had a big change in how I started to teach, it was around the kind of 2010 to 2012 mark, in which I was doing a lot of plant medicine and a lot of trips to India and a lot of tantra, and I was single for a couple of years and just going deep, deep, deep within in every way I could imagine, just really like fierce practice. And it was just clearing me out so much of fears and doubts and insecurities that I just, like you said, it was just a very natural shift for me to then teach in ways that I hadn't taught before. And I was so just deep in the kind of in the heart and the flow of it all. I actually didn't give a shit that of the community perception of it. I actually truly didn't give a shit, which was new to me, because before that I was constantly preoccupied with, what is everyone else going to think? And was that a good class? Was it what they wanted? And kind of that old craving of external validation. I had that, just layers of it. And it was so freeing to have none of that left, like truly like caring for people, but not really being concerned of what they think about me. It was a completely new experience, even though there was a period there, probably about a year or two, where certain studios that I was teaching for didn't want me teaching for them anymore because I'd changed. I wasn't teaching power yoga anymore. It wasn't suitable for them. And that kind of hurt a little bit. And just comments from people like, we missed the way you used to teach, and just shit like that. And then as I just kept being authentic with it, there's that leap, which becomes inevitable to just leap into what's authentic for us. But there can be suffering along the way, for sure. That's been my experience anyway.
And that authenticity that you touched upon, I think that's really, really important as well. I'm going to quote this study completely wrong, but they did a study, somewhere, I read this, and people are able to have a strong daily meditation practice if they learn from someone who has a strong daily meditation practice, even if that teacher doesn't tell them that they do. And that's what I believe with everything that I teach. If I am there teaching a power yoga class, I'm not going to teach it that well. When I'm teaching meditation, I'm really teaching it because I really believe in it and it's authentic. And I feel that when I don't pick up things, I've had yoga teachers before and they've told me, well, I don't meditate at all. And that's fine. You don't have to, because the type of yoga that you teach is different to the type of yoga that I teach, and it all has its space and its place. But it's that authenticity, and I think that's what draws people. And I also believe that, when people see you at the beginning of your journey, because everything that we do now, Stuart, is quite public, and there's a risk to that, for sure, like being on social media all the time, putting out these things, podcasts and, and interviews and things like that. But I tend to get a lot more good feedback now, because people have seen my journey, seen me change, seen me go from where I was to where I am now. Not saying that it's better. It's not a linear process. Nothing in life is linear. In my opinion, but I feel that when you do something that's authentic to you, and you're honest about things, you know, we're talking a bit about plant medicine now, you know, this is an interesting thing to me too, you know, because there's a lot of this talk around now around plant medicine, and it's a really interesting conversation. And you know, and it's just about authenticity as far as being a teacher goes, and just being honest, I think. But yeah, the plant medicine thing is interesting though. It seems like it's exploding everywhere at the moment. After I came back, I see every other article is about this. It seems like people are obsessed.
Well, I guess it's kind of like Gwyneth Paltrow had her show where they
Oh
really
yeah, the
did
Goop.
plant medicine. Yeah, what is it? Goop?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Goop
So,
girls or something.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that has been a part of it. And there's also like the MAPS Institute, which is doing really
Yeah.
cutting edge research into bringing psychedelics back into more of a formalized one-to-one psychotherapeutic format. So it seems to have shifted gears from my observations. I mean, I haven't seen, I mean, here in Western Australia, it's been pretty prevalent for like 15 years, but the kind of mainstreaming of it, seeing it pop up in stuff like Goop and other articles and the MAPS Institute, I'm seeing a lot of positive stuff from it, but I'm also seeing, and Joe and I talk about it quite a bit. It's in conversation quite a bit. The lack of discernment around it, and like, it's not to be fucked with, and it's not for everyone either.
Yeah.
And just the amount of preparation and I think study to truly get the benefits from it often gets pushed aside, and people are quick to rush into it thinking that it'll be the kind of answer to everything, and the ultimate healing elixir, which I guess it potentially can be if it's truly integrated into something such as a tantra or yoga practice, but quite commonly it lacks the integration, and it can actually get quite messy from what we've seen and lead to a lot of pathologies and dysfunctions. And I'd love to hear your observations on it.
Yeah, I have had some experiences. I haven't done ayahuasca, but I am a big believer in, you know, what mushrooms have done for me. However, where I sit on this is quite strongly feeling that, you know, it's funny. At one point I was doing mushrooms, not regularly, not abusing them, but I was thinking, oh, it might be quite interesting to, you know, be involved in, you know, healing in some way with this. And then I decided, no, this is completely not something I want to do. And the reason is that it's the same thing as doing asana practice. If you don't start from a grounded space, you're fucked. So, you know, because you're just pumping more energy into your body. Same thing with sex, and or anything, you know, working in a business, working in fashion, anything you do. If you don't have your grounding solid, then there's no knowing where it's going to go. And if you prep for it, and I'm not just talking about a good diet before, I'm talking about, you know, get into some type of like gentle movement practice, be meditating, you know, and make sure that after you finish, you are meditating. You need to be clear of mind before you do these things. And if you're not balanced before you do something like that, I'm not sure, and I'm not an expert. I mean, I'm not an expert at anything, but I feel like you in my opinion, I'm not sure that it's okay to be doing these things if you're not already creating that grounding to begin with and continuing with that grounding so you can understand what's happened. Otherwise, it's a bit of a band-aid. Of course, with PTSD, you know, and I've seen it firsthand. You know, one of my best friends, she had PTSD and it did help her for sure. But we have to, you know, it's just too casual now. It's too casual. And when you mix it with things like alcohol and you disrespect this natural, it's, you know, it's so profound. The conversations that I have had with God, you know, I'm a God person. I'll talk about God all the time. You know, I'm not religious, but I'm a God person. So, you know, the conversations that I've had have been incredible, and they've guided me, but I have had to have so much respect. And this is why I had so many problems when I was younger, when I, you know, was partying and stuff, because I didn't have the grounding, I didn't have the tools, I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and I was taking drugs and drinking and, you know, everything. It was like a washing machine. And I think that this casualness of doing mushrooms and the just not having that grounding, it's quite dangerous. And there's also this thing, you know, again, I've never taken ayahuasca, so, you know, anyone feel free to grill me on this if I'm saying something stupid, but it's like, it's the worst type of a spiritual experience is a surface one, because you're not getting a spiritual experience, you're just ticking a box. And to make, and as someone who is holding these ceremonies, to lead people to believe that they are having a spiritual experience without checking that they've had a spiritual experience before taking something like this, it's dangerous. And it doesn't solve problems. And I've seen time and time again people coming back from having done ayahuasca and saying it was a deep spiritual thing, but they still go on behaving just notoriously. And I think there needs to be just more respect and more grounding. And it's the same thing, you know, when we look at yoga, like, yeah, or, you know, Western yoga, yeah, cool. Like, there are so many different versions of it. Do it with goats, cool, fine. Like it doesn't all need to be serious. But I think with something like this, it does need to be serious, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's so powerful. One thing I am seeing a lot of is people having profound experiences, and then, similar to yoga teachers having great experiences with yoga and then quickly becoming a yoga teacher, that's great. But again, like with these plant medicines, they're so powerful, there's so much at stake. It's not the same thing. I think the requirement to become a facilitator, a quote unquote shaman, should be much more rigorous than what it currently is. And I'm grateful to have sat with some very masterful shamans that really have studied these herbs and used them wisely and are wise people and have great instruction. But since I was using it, I don't, it's very rare now, like maybe once every couple years when it all aligns, you know. But when I was doing a lot of plant medicine ceremonies, yeah, I was so grateful that it wasn't quite what it is today. There was just a few people facilitating, and you had to really seek them out, and they would have quite stringent measures before sitting. And it was beautiful. I had so many teachings from it. I would often, and still do, see it each time I did sit, especially with ayahuasca. It felt like the equivalent of like a month yoga or meditation retreat. That one night of sitting for just 8, 10, 12 hours with ayahuasca was completely profound, and it changed the trajectory of my life beautifully. It's what actually brought Joe and me together, like literally. And
Really?
it showed us our kids, and like completely profound. But if it wasn't for the yoga practice and tantra practice and the bhakti, the devotion, and even just the physicality of really being able to contain the energy, like it was like hours of asana and breath work to be able to contain the energy that was happening. If it wasn't for the yoga, I don't think it would have been quite as profound. I really don't think I could have handled what was going on and taken it as such teachings. I think it would have just been another fleeting experience, or it would have been similar to the drug taking days, and it would have been another kind of crutch of like, I need to get back there to get high, to get some insight, to be connected to God. And then when I'm not with the medicine, I'm fucked, which is pretty common. See that a
Mm.
lot. So yeah, I agree. It needs to be taken a lot more serious. But
Mm.
I'm sure over time, the wisdom and discernment will be developed and like matured. It seems like in the mainstreaming of it, there's a kind of excitement and like immaturity around it. Like, whoa, look what we've got. And we kind of got over the stigmas in regards to psychedelics, or maybe we're still collectively getting over the stigmas, but seems to be happening. The kind of
Mm.
paranoia and stigmas that happened kind of post 70s, when people were taking a lot of psychedelics, but then people took it too far then as well. It went from being a beautiful revolution to then a lot of people taking it too far. So potentially collectively we'll take the psychedelics thing again too far, but I'm seeing a lot of good. I'm seeing with the PTSD thing, like you brought up, I'm seeing a lot of really intelligent usage of that with skilled teachers and skilled psychotherapists doing great work. And I think it's
Mm.
such a powerful time that's re-emerging with some really cutting edge, sophisticated people at the kind of front line of it. It's not just hippies and your typical kind of medicine folks at the front line. Like, that's beautiful. You know, I'm in that scene a bit as well, and I have total respect. But it's also cool to see scientists and psychiatrists and psychotherapists kind of bringing that in, which I think is helping bring the science into it a bit more and the credibility. So hopefully all of that combination will really have it be truly a medicine, truly a smart, like, ally that can be used wisely. That's my hope for it, and I'm kind
Mm.
of seeing evidence of that.
Yeah, and what an incredible thing to be coming back to, this full circle when we
Yeah.
began, with that kind of the witchery of the world, and the feminine, looking to herbs and nature, and then going through pharmaceutical, and then we're coming back around, and that's incredible what's
Yeah.
going on. And I agree with what you said. It's great that we have the science behind it, because it needs it now. It needs to be it can't just be me sitting in the woods naked on mushrooms being like, this is good, you should all do it, you'll all feel, it needs to be both. It needs to be both. The man needs to be in his jacket too. And I think, but it is an incredible time, the fact that we're looking back, and I see it, with this whole COVID thing, everyone's in their gardens. I'm like, oh yeah, like, okay. I mean, obviously not everyone. For some people, this has been horrific. But yeah, I feel like the pendulum just swung too far out in the 80s and the 90s, and now we're just coming back into a little bit more balance. I hope, anyway.
I hope so too. I mean, it's a crazy time. It's also a dark time. We were speaking with friends in New York City a couple of days ago, and they literally have not left their apartment in weeks. A couple of them haven't left in months, and the combination of the COVID into then the riots and the looting, like, they're feeling like they're kind of in this hell on earth type thing. And what we're seeing with the police brutality, the murders, and I mean, it's so shit. It's so heartbreaking. But I hope it seems to be this potent catalyst for bringing more awareness into places where it just lacked. It's definitely doing that for me. It's forcing me to really see blind spots in my own awareness of where I do take my privilege for granted, and lack the awareness of how many people it's just a struggle to get through the day. And this racism thing, I mean, it's very prevalent here in Australia too. I mean, especially Western Australia, it's one of the whitest places you could imagine. And I mean, we were just on this beautiful spot on the river, which used to be a sacred spot for Aboriginals. And, you know, now it's high-rise buildings and just the wealthy and privileged can be there really, which is a very common experience. So I really hope that this is shining so much light on this thick residue of racism that is still humming through our collective. And I'm seeing that, and I really am hoping that it continues to uprise within everyone, even the most arrogant and ignorant, at least a little bit of seeing what has actually happened, because it's thick. It's very thick in the collective.
Yeah. It's a big opportunity at the moment for, you know, death and rebirth in terms of people's attitudes. And I've had to check myself quite a bit, because I can go on the attack where I am. You know, I could go on the attack, like mentally, sometimes I go on the attack, because it is, you know, it's a very white middle class place. I don't know why I'm talking quietly then, but you know, it's very different to, you know, I spent a lot of time in London, and so it is very much like that, and it is hard for people to understand what's going on and why it's important. But I've just been finding that when I talk to people about it, as I'm educating myself, because I don't know that enough myself, and I'm never going to know enough because I'm white, but when I talk to people about it, I'm having to really make sure I'm grounded before I have those conversations, so that I don't, you know, so that I don't do it from like an aggravated place, because 3 months ago, I didn't know as much as I know about things. And, you know, so it's like, it's that kind of just be, yeah, I hear you. It's a big one. There's a bit, and I feel it down here. I feel there's in me, there's a feeling of internal fire that people aren't more quick to hop on this and to learn a bit more. But it's one of those things. It's pointless me getting fiery about it anyway. But yeah, it's the word. There's a lot going.
I partially disagree. Like,
yeah,
you know, like I think this is a time. I totally hear you, and it seems like a time where we need to get fired up, you know?
True.
And I feel a similar thing of like, maybe I shouldn't get fired up, and maybe I shouldn't speak up. Like when I hear just the habitual racism that people don't even mean to say it, like especially like our parents' generation, like and beyond. And I've got Jewish heritage, and I even hear it from like, so I even hear it from like my Jewish grandmother and those other elders, like really racist shit. And it's almost not innocent's not the word. They're doing it from just a place of ignorance, because I mean they've gone through it as well, like horrific racism, yet here they are being incredibly racist as well. And I find myself in that predicament as well, of like getting really triggered and really like fired up, like, what the fuck are you even saying? Like, can you even see what you're saying? Yet I can also see that that's not helpful. That's not actually helpful, and it just further exacerbates the resistance. So I hear you, like the fiery like reaction. Is it actually that's the inquiry for me. Is it actually gonna help? Or is it just going to further thicken the divide? But I think in general, it seems like this is a time we need to get fired up, you know, in general. But I mean, it's also firing up white supremacists. So it is a bit of a predicament, because we're seeing a lot of white supremacists get equally fired up. And it could highly likely, like very possibly, not highly likely, but very possibly lead to civil war, like the way it's going. So it is, a really interesting and challenging paradox of like the how fired up do we get, and can we like truly protest like in sacred activism in like peaceful ways, which I'm seeing a lot of, which is beautiful. But it's also understandable the fired up riots and the anger, like it's totally understandable. But I hear you, it's an interesting predicament.
For me, what I found was that it really helped me to seek out sources and information on the best way for me to approach the types of conversations that I was getting upset about, so that I could communicate my message to my Jewish grandma and to my parents and to my friends who are also having the same problems with their parents. Because the first few times I had, I tried to engage, people would shut down because I was getting very, aggravated by it. So I sought out ways, and there are lots of really great resources of how to have these conversations with people who are a bit older. And because otherwise it's like, I'm vegan, so I have to not monitor myself, but I have to, in order to, be an activist, sometimes you have to find the best way to have the conversation. And if I try to have the conversation with someone and I shut them down, the game is over. Totally. I've created someone who doesn't like vegans. I've created someone who doesn't like another white person going on about this situation, and who turns around and says, you're just giving it lip service or something like that. So I had to seek ways to communicate properly without shutting people down, and I'm used to having to do that because of veganism, but this is a really different planet of conversation. And just finding how best to communicate without sticking my foot in it or up someone's butt.
Well put. And I think it's a beautiful integration into the practice, like the yoga of communication. And it's so easy to take that high ground with our moral choices and all.
You're always going to piss some people off though. I post a lot of stuff that gets people fired up, and people unfollow me, and it doesn't matter, that like you can't keep everyone happy. No. And that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, coming to peace with that is really important. The people pleaser in me is pretty thick. There's not much of it left, but it pops its head up every now and then. It's definitely been a big part of my life, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate with that. And I think it's actually a big underlying stress in people's lives right now, especially with this the place of social media in our life, and that constant checking in of validation. I think it's sending a lot. Well, apparently science is showing that it's sending people really nuts and depressed, and these insecurities that were already running rampant are just multiplied big time. And with this younger generation, apparently this kind of narcissism can be kind of quantified and like measured, and the correlation with that and this social media image, and with everything going on in the world, the unraveling of humanity, really a lot is changing. And it's a big shift for people to, again, just own that authenticity. It feels like that's a reoccurring piece of this conversation, of really stepping into that authenticity and seeing where we do fall into that trap of either unconscious reactivity and like righteousness, which can be pretty prevalent with spiritual folks and vegans, and it can, with anyone, but it can feel like a kind of holier than thou type thing. And I can recall a time where I've felt that, and just incredibly righteous and always right.
Yeah. I like what Ram Dass says on it though. You can either be, do you want to be righteous or do you want to be free? Do you want to be happy and free? And it's not, you know, a yes or no. It's a weaving. You kind of have these waves of anger and righteousness, and then you unpick them and you ask, okay, well, why do I feel like that? You know, how was that positive? And you know, we're humans, we're not perfect. We're always going to be triggered. But it's just how quickly we can bring ourselves back down from being triggered. It's a good measure of our practice. And also, and it is really, it's hard not to that righteousness. But what I have found in myself, just from personal experience, is that sometimes when I think someone is being righteous, it's because I know that I'm wrong. And I'm trying to step away from that righteousness and going on too many rants and censoring myself as much as I can, especially when I'm teaching, you know, just really big step away from that. And you know, I get to be more brutally honest in these kind of situations and when I do, you know, my interviews and stuff. But yeah, it's something you have to monitor a bit.
Totally. Yeah, that kind of self-checking in, that witness consciousness and staying accountable. I mean, it's hard to see by ourselves. That's the thing. It's so easy to miss, and it does really require a contemplative, deep meditation practice to either witness it, or I mean, the classic route is like to be with a master teacher who will call you out on your shit. But that's becoming less and less common now. We're kind of typically either left to like conversations to pick it apart with one another. You know, a good friend will do it as well, the yoga of relationship. But a lot of yogis and yoginis are kind of left to their own devices, left to their own mind, really, which it's tricky to become that accountable with our own mind, because we can be very self-deceptive and like you brought up, bypass that because it's challenging to really see where the consciousness gets stuck. But if we lean into it, there can be that release into a deeper wisdom, which then leads to more ease and authenticity. But fuck, it's a deep practice.
Yeah, and particularly at this time, considering that, you know, people have had more time to themselves, you know, I'm going to misquote this, but I think it's Krishna Das that says, a farmer doesn't plant his seeds and then look at them and wait for them to grow. The farmer plants the seeds and then he goes away and he gets on with, or she goes away and gets on with her life, and you know, things grow. And so usually with practice and with anything like this and working on our own righteousness and, you know, just unpicking our everything, you kind of you seed it, and then, you know, and then it kind of grows from that, and you water it here and there. But because of what's been going on, a lot of us, I know within the community of yoga, I obviously can't speak for everyone, but we've kind of been having to look at the seeds as they've been growing as well, which has been quite weird. It's been quite, so I think, yeah, for me, I'm really interested to see how the next year goes, because, you know, a lot of people who have been in privilege and not been too affected by this situation, you know, there's been a lot of self-reflection and a lot of, you know, different ways of practicing, and I wonder how things will go. But I agree with what you're saying about the importance of community, and that's what I personally feel my heart is screaming for at the moment, being sat in a room with 30 people, just all kind of wanting to go on not the same journey, but all interested in just being slightly better humans. And I'm really missing that at the moment, because we're seeing all this negative, there's just a lot of negative input, and not the community not being next to and breathing with and sharing the sweat of, you know, everyone else. I feel it. Yeah,
we just re-entered into public classes the last couple weeks, and it's been beautiful. It's felt so
how was
good.
it?
Wonderful.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it would be a bit more awkward generally, but it was very natural. Everyone was very natural and it was beautiful. And there was a few like glitchy moments where I thought we were all a bit too close, but it was beautiful, you know. That was just like probably probably a bit of fear, you know, because we could potentially step into this second wave and maybe regret that we did open everything up too soon. I don't know. There's a lot of different views on that, but for the most part, just beautiful to be in physical space with other people. I missed it as well, big time. Yeah. But let's shift gears before we wrap this up. I did want to ask you your take on yogic consumerism, which you speak a bit about. Like, what is that all about, please?
Yeah. I think I'll focus this on fashion because that's where I'm focused at the moment, and that's mostly because, you know, when I was first in the world as a professional, my background, my work was always in fashion advertising, and so I feel really pulled to that, and also because it's funny. So if we look at what's going on in the world at the moment, in terms of, you know, not the whole world, because I am very aware that you and I, we kind of, and the people who will be listening to this, we are in somewhat of a bubble where we know about veganism, we know about, you know, we know about yoga, we're interested in things like this and that and the other. And it's become apparent to me coming back from vegan Disneyland in Bali to the UK that, okay, like I've been in a bubble. But when we look at, you know, the way that a lot of us are trying to live our lives now, we're making conscious decisions to do with our bodies. So we're choosing to eat organic or to be vegetarian or to be vegan one day a week or, you know, every day of the week. We're choosing to go for less packaging. Or we're choosing to not put products on our skin that are covered in chemicals. So we're doing all these things. But what I find is that the last thing to go, and the thing that I've personally put off, and I see a lot of people within my industry not really paying attention to, is fashion. And my belief from all the talking and all the research that I've been doing is that that's because we see fashion and clothes as separate. If something goes on our skin, it's absorbed into our skin. If we eat something, it is our body. If I take cocaine, I am putting it in my body, and that is prescribing to that whole process of pain and all the awful stuff that has happened in order for that drug to get to me. So I'm not putting it in my body. And I'm not eating this, and I'm not putting this chemical on my skin because I believe it's been tested on animals. But the fashion is the last thing to go. And I think when you start to get into the ethics of yoga, the values of yoga, and let's just talk about the yamas and the niyamas, right, to begin with, just the basic one, non-violence, non-harming. Okay, well, if I'm becoming more conscious about what I put up my nose, what I put on my body, what I wash my hair with, you know, what I eat, what about my consumerism? Because every time I'm paying for something, I'm essentially saying, I agree with this process. I want it to continue going. I want to pump this industry full of my money. I love it. Give me more. Like, I'm funding this. So what about fashion? And I see there are so many incredible resources out there, which, you know, if you want in the show notes or anything like that, there's some incredible organizations doing great stuff with this, giving out the good, right statistics, because I will misquote.
Please send them through.
And some incredible platforms. And essentially, fashion contributes to so much horror, not just to do with the environment water, food, water, all the dyes, what is going on with water is shocking, actually. And the amount of waste that it creates, like 1/3 of everything that is produced is goes to waste. The amount of water that it takes to make one pair of jeans, the fact that we're not educated on what happens when we wash our clothes, the microfibers, every time we're washing our clothes, and then there's all this other stuff going on with fashion in terms of, workers, female rights, sexual abuse in the workplace. Something like 1 in 7 women get abused in the fashion industry in the workplace. We're not thinking about, the cotton, like, where's that cotton come from? Where has that t-shirt come from? What has happened to the person who made that clothes and that item? And why is it that I can get 3 t-shirts for the price of 1? Who is paying for that? Well, someone is paying for it, and the person who is paying for it has no political power. They have no rights. They're being paid below working wage. They're probably a woman. They're probably being abused in some way, and they have children, and their children are having to work because their mum's not being paid properly. And I could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I won't, because I'm ranting. But there's a lot.
No, it's necessary. It's good.
There's so much, even just to get the raw material or the dyeing process in itself, the dyeing of clothing, if it's not done in a very, and there are some incredible companies who are doing dyeing of jeans without any water. Man, it's incredible. But there is so much that goes into you getting that t-shirt. And I never used to think about that at all. And the reality of it is once you become, you don't even have to be becoming more conscious. I'm not saying that, but once you are becoming more aware of the energy that everything contains, that the energy in me is the same energy in you, it's the same energy in the food, in the plants, and I respect the energy in myself, so I respect the energy in everything else. And if I then put something on my body and I don't know how or why that has come to me, then the likelihood is that there's a bad story attached to that. And actually, when we're talking about putting, a chemical on your skin, it's the same. Your skin is an organ. You're still putting that piece of clothing on your skin. So if that clothing's covered in chemicals and it's covered in that energy, that process, which has taken it all around the world, and then you're going to throw it out anyway to buy something new, the amount that we're going through clothes, it's not like, think about non-violence, think about non-harming. Everything that is involved in that item getting to you is violent. But we don't think about it that way. We just think, oh, okay, right, one top, and the solution, it's not going to be a simple solution. It's not a case of, okay, well, we'll just get the government to change the rules, or it's not just our responsibility. Because for a while I was feeling like it was, we as individuals have all the power, but that's not true. But we do have choice. We do have the money, we do have the wallets, and we do have our attention. So there are really simple things that people can do. They can not throw stuff out so easily. Don't buy things unless they're broken or unless you really need to. Have little WhatsApp groups with your mates and swap clothes. Have people over, or at your yoga studio, have like a clothing swap. Do things like that. You can have full markets that have no money, or you can use money and just, you can buy retro clothing, vintage clothing, you can buy charity shop stuff. But it's interesting when you go into a charity shop and you see how many clothes that haven't been worn more than twice, you're like, oh my God. And this is all waste. And I'm not saying don't ever buy anything new, but what is cool is that once you stop buying the stuff that you don't really need, the cheap stuff, you then have a bit more money where you can buy the good stuff that lasts a long time. You invest in a sustainable brand, then you tag them on your Instagram, like glorify these people who are doing good things. And there are so many cool new young companies who are doing these incredible things. So the more that we put our power behind our attention to these companies, where we're kind of promoting what they're doing because we agree with what they're doing, by giving them their money and giving them our attention. Back in the day, I would tag like Adidas in one of my Instagram pictures, and then I was like, well, hey, hang on, why are you doing that? Number one, like no, like that doesn't make any sense. You're promoting them for free. You don't know anything about the process of how they got their clothes. And I think we just need to be really conscious, you know, if you're going to do something, if, you know, a brand wants to sponsor you, or you're going to wear those, you know, yoga pants, or you're going to, I think it just needs to be a slightly higher level of consciousness, which I myself am just at the beginning of understanding. But what it really, for me, is about, it's about, you know, everything in terms of my journey through yoga. I'm having to unpick so much, you know, because when I first started doing this, you know, the first thing I thought was, okay, well, I don't really buy that much, and I'll buy buy 2 pairs of trainers, you know, once a year from, you know, a really cheap company, because why will I buy 2 pairs of the same trainers? Well, because I'll wear them out quickly because they're cheap. And then I went, whoa, 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 whoa. Hang on, mate. Well, if you just bought 1 pair and they were from a good brand that you knew was doing a good thing, and I'm not saying go to a big brand that has one sustainable line, because you're still pumping money into a brand that has, that's its ethos. It doesn't care about that. It's a big company and it's about profit margins. But go and find a company that is small, or, you know, medium or whatever, and they're doing something that you would want to put your money behind. You know, I wouldn't go and buy a McDonald's now. It's the same thing. Like, why would you go and buy 2 McDonald's where you can go and buy, I don't know, where you can go and just make your own curry? Like, I know that's a bad, do you see what I mean?
It's a good comparison for sure.
Yeah. So I feel that it's for me, it's just about talking about ethics and again, and values, and unpicking. And it's not about pointing the fingers, and it's about everyone having their own way of doing things, because fashion is so important, because it's a way that we can express ourselves and be creative. But we also get to do that in a way that doesn't create violence and harm. And we can support the companies that are doing the good stuff, which will in turn make the bigger brands behave a little bit better. You know, I don't want to keep harping on about veganism, because that's not what I'm about. But if you look, for example, what do you guys have? You have like Walmart? You have Woolworths?
No, we have Woolworths and Coles. They're the 2 big ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have some big, we have like a Asda, and, you know, like Tesco's and Sainsbury's and all these big supermarkets. No one, you know, the head of the supermarket didn't wake up one day and go, yep, I'm going to just make this section a vegan section. They just went by the demand of the people. And what's interesting about veganism and about yoga is that it took off because it felt good. And I feel like, just from my own experience, that, and of how contagious it is, this buying soulfully, it's something that will have trajectory quite quickly, because when you feel good about something, you want to talk about it, you know? So I feel like, okay, well, why not? Let's start applying it to fashion, and applying it to, you know, just how you buy things in general, because there's a lot of stuff in the world already. So maybe, you know, maybe it's important to bring all the stuff, that all the ethics that we're bringing to ourselves and to the way we eat, into the way that we buy things that aren't alive and moving.
Yeah, love it. And it is such an important piece, and I feel the clarity and the passion behind it from you. So thank you for being a real voice behind it. It does feel like a crucial piece, and it is so easy to go for the more convenient, fast option, and it can seem inconvenient to so many people to make that more conscious choice. But when they feel it coming from such a radiant place, like how you just spoke of it, not in a righteous way, just in a very passionate, informed way, that helps. Because I've definitely fallen into the trap of pushing and judging so heavily, and it doesn't help the cause at all, does it? So that balance of being passionate and being informed and just spreading that passion, you seem to be doing really beautifully. So thank you. I really honor that. And it does feel vital.
And it is, correct in what you're saying. We have to be so careful in the way in being righteous about it. That's why you don't have to throw away all your stuff from H&M and Primark and all those brands. But when you're wearing them and someone comes up to you and says, oh, you know, I really like that, you say, oh yeah, I got it from here, but I'm not buying any new stuff from them at the moment anymore because I'm doing this new thing, and that's it. And you don't have to do it absolutely. It's like everything. You don't have to be militant about it, because militancy doesn't work. It's like going on a diet. It doesn't work. It's just about a habit, and it's not going to be easy right at the beginning, but you don't have to be absolute about it at the beginning. Why not just, you know, try buying less from those brands and buying a bit more from the sustainable ones, and you know, just everyone has to go at their own pace. Everyone's just doing their best with the information that they have. So yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there anything else you want to let our listeners know about? Anything coming up? Any live classes or anything like that? Anything you want to let people know?
I'm going to be teaching a meditation masterclass with a company, with a platform called Limitless. That's probably going to come out in July. So yeah, the best place to connect with me, I hate to say it, but I'm always on there, and it's just accessible, is Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at impulseyoga_. And yeah, I'm going to be teaching a meditation masterclass. Not sure if I like that name, master, because it's not really, I would never call myself a master or an expert at anything. I know nothing.
Well, that's very humble of you, but it has become a bit of a catchphrase to call it a masterclass, hasn't it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. And you know what? If that's what works. But yeah, so there's a company called Limitless, and I work with them. So I'll be doing like a 2-hour just teaching meditation and talking about it, and talking about the 4 different parts of the mind, and going deep into some of the traditional stuff, and also just talking to people about, you know, the best meditation is the meditation that you actually do. So just kind of de-obsession with method, and yeah, just diving into that a little bit. And yeah, everything's just on my Instagram, so connect with me there. I'm hopefully going to be back in Bali in September or August, who knows when the skies open up. So I'll be over there teaching and doing workshops, and also bringing in lots of other people who are just incredible and hosting their workshops, because there's so much incredible information, and so many great voices out there doing so much great work. So yeah,
wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, love your work, and be safe and well in the UK, and good luck in getting back over to Bali in September. Really appreciate your time,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
This has been beautiful. We could have just kept on riffing and talking, and yeah, really love what you're doing, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Stuart.
Yeah,
I really appreciate
all right.
it.
You take care. Bye, Sarah.
Thanks.